I was an expert at being a screw up. Like, I don't know if I could have made any more dumb mistakes, bonehead moves, out of ignorance, just out of arrogance. I don't know if it's possible. I used to pride myself on the fact that I'd never laid my hands on a woman or cheated on a woman. Like, that's a decent human being. But I was raised right. I was taught right from wrong. And I somehow literally made every bad decision possible. Now looking back, I'm about to be 53, and to be where I am, those life decisions and mistakes, I kind of look at it, God loves you by punishing you, by disciplining you. And it got me to where I am. And while I would love to not have victims in the world for my crime, I can't change anything. Had I not been a piece of crap, I don't know how to be a good guy. And again, it wasn't the journey I laid out for me. And I look back and I'm wondering how many people did I disappoint, and am I making them proud now, by trying to, at this point in life, be a better person. But I don't know. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all my mistakes.
Well, that's the true goal of, let me turn the mic up. That's the true goal of, being a good person and trying to be better and be a better person than what you were the day before. And I have a similar, past that I've done some things that have caused some repercussions in folks' lives. And now I'm trying to give back to make amends for some of those things and bad decisions that I made at a younger age, that wisdom come and experience, as you said. And now, your message is resounding in so many different ways to so many different people that it's just amazing the reach that you're getting just by talking about yourself and educating people on history and on schools that anybody can do. But you have a great story behind it, and you have a great way of telling the story. So can you give us a little background on your storytelling? Because you are a very well-versed storyteller.
Yeah, to stay out of trouble mainly. That's where I learned to tell stories. And you know what I think? The thing I love the most about history and stories is the aha moment. I love to shock you. Like, I'll tell you, I told you and your girl stories just to make you go, I did not know that. I'm addicted to that reaction from people if I could shock them. And the way you tell a story helps deliver that. And I don't know, I think they go hand in hand. And in prison is when I really learned how to tell stories. I learned the art of storytelling. And because I told it stories to so many different men and backgrounds, I had to make it universal in a way. So, iron hardens iron, I guess, in a way. And that's a rough place to learn to tell stories. And that's a tough audience. Your story, right?
Yeah, what happens if they don't like your story?
Yeah, take you out back. Yeah, it's a bad deal. Go to the train station. But yeah, you learn there because the stakes are higher. You don't want to get caught lying. You don't want to have, when your integrity's not on point, like people will check you. And to trust you, that's all you got, your word in there. So you tell truthful stories, people trust you.
It makes you relatable because, you can give people all the stats, the facts and logic behind it. But if it doesn't connect with them and doesn't resonate, then it's just another story. But telling it from the perspective that you do with everything that you went through and the revelation that you've had, and then the dedication that you've had to making sure you continue on that positive path, it can only inspire other folks to say that, hey, he was all the way here on the other side, racist, went to jail. He could have went, Aryan Nation, gone full hardcore, but no, he took a step back and realized that this isn't the proper way. And let me self-evaluate first before I start blaming other folks in the environment and see what role I had to play in where I am. And once you start taking that stock in yourself, then you could begin to grow and begin to become that better person you want to be. But you have to want to be. No one can make you do that. And the fact that you chose to make that choice, that says it all right there.
My porcelain partners in the white community, they don't like it when we talk about white privilege. And, I realized, like I was talking to Christina, white privilege means a lot of things to a lot of people. And I was very fortunate to be born white. I'm glad I'm born white. I don't know any of my white friends who says they wish they'd been born white American. That's not disrespect, but
no, that's the truth.
But with that comes responsibility, I believe. And my skin color allows me to live differently, think differently, and move differently in this country than people who, it's absolutely real. I have it, but it's also incumbent upon those who have it to use it to lift others up, not hold them down, not exploit them at their expense. But with privilege comes responsibility. And I think a lot of people don't want to be accountable for that. And, I was one of those people for decades.
I mean, the fact that you're able, the first step is recognizing it. I speak to a lot of conservative Republicans and, you know, all on the right side. And most of them don't even want to acknowledge that there is one. Once you acknowledge it, you don't, doesn't mean that you're for it, you're against it. It's just saying, okay, I recognize it and you have a valid point. That's all most people want to hear. But when it goes to, you know, you're not listening to understand, you're listening to respond. And I feel like that's one of the biggest issues in our culture right now, that everyone wants to be right, but no one wants to do right. They want to talk about it, but when it's time to live up to that, I'll get back to you. So if we start taking stock of ourselves, holding ourselves accountable, then the change will start to come naturally, because you won't be focused on what you're doing, because you're focused on what am I doing to better myself, to better my situation, to better my station in life, and what can I do to make my community better. And I feel like our country, our community have lost that thought process. And I want to get back to that place.
Being accountable is inconvenient. It's painful. Nobody wants to do it because we don't want to admit the flaws in our character, that we're wrong, that we did somebody wrong and have to apologize. Nobody likes that. And I was that way. I was that way forever. You know, until I learned to swallow my pride and ego in prison, I figured out that those things were bringing me down. And people don't want to change because comfort is the enemy of change. And if most people realize everything that they dream of is right on the other side of the very thing they fear. And change is often the thing we fear the most because it's unknown. Like it's looking back now, when I was going from a racist ideology to being an advocate for Black America, one extreme to the other, a place I never thought I'd be or a path I'd ever walk. And it's my path and purpose. I never in a million years thought that my brain could literally make the jump, the intuitive leap that it has. There's no books, there's no training. It can be done. I just wish there was more information out there that people could, or conversations. I think there's a lot more people like me who don't know. They're scared to change. Will they be cut off? Will they be, their friends and family won't have anything to do with them. And sometimes that's part of it. But do you really want to know those people that are bringing you down and holding you down that way?
Yeah. Growth is hard. Growth is uncomfortable. Myself in a new career that I started, that it was very uncomfortable because I was in uncharted territory, didn't know where to start, know where to begin, know where to end. But I had the faith that I know if I put the hard work in and I have a good team around me to support me and uplift me, I can succeed. And a year later into my career, I'm having a pretty successful career, and things are looking up because I've was able to tweak my thought process and take stock in myself and see the weaknesses or the lack of strength in some categories and try to strengthen those by the people around me. And I know those are a lot of things that have to fall into place for those things to be blessed. And everyone doesn't have that opportunity. But if you have that want and will, God will put the right people in your path. As long as your heart is pure and you really want to change and do better, the pieces will fall into place. Just stay focused, stay determined, and don't sweat the things you can't control. That's the number one thing. Once you stop worrying about things you can't control, life becomes a lot easier.
You also, for me growing up, you fit the stereotype of young Black American male back in the day because you were on the streets, you were hustling, you were an OG. People don't ever take time to consider what that means. Now that I understand the difference, I think you fit a stereotype I was taught, that you became a man that defies all the stereotypes. But you became what most Black American men are to me. You want to take care of your girl, you want to provide security, you work your tail off, and that's most of Black men in America. But you came up fulfilling a stereotype that was taught. Yeah. But my hair doesn't smell like a wet dog.
It doesn't. He's taking a shower and I haven't smelled any wet dog. My dogs, I know what they smell like, and he does not smell like a wet dog or bologna. I heard that one before too.
But we're so caught up in stereotypes, right? And when I say you defied a stereotype because you fit what a lot of perception are, this is the issue I have. When I see people going, "Oh, Black men are 50% of violent crimes in this country," I'm like, how many of you met? How many of you know? Or is that just a simple statistic out of context you're taking? Then you hear single homes. How many do you know? How many have you ever been to a Black family's home to have dinner? Have you ever had them to yours? Have you been out to a restaurant with them? Most of them know. So if they can't answer that question, yes, I really don't put much value in their opinion.
I agree. And unfortunately, most prejudice and racist thoughts and thought processes come from people they've never even interacted with. That's why I take it upon myself when I get into those right wing groups. 'Cause it's interesting because most of the time, it always comes to some race, comments, some lazy comments. But I say 10% of the time of those interactions, at the end of the day, we both have the same goal in mind. We want to have a better country and live safely and take care of our family. And after all the insults get traded, and we're sitting there like, okay, let's really talk about the facts. And then I'm actually good friends with a couple of, right wing guys that I would probably never would cross paths with, but from that line of insults and put downs, we still came to a common cause that, hey, look, we might agree to disagree. We have the same goal. We have a different way to get there, but let's at least talk about it. And you don't have to agree, but just take the time to understand why I feel the way I feel. And I'm going to take the same time with you. And then we can shake hands, give a pound, and like, okay, let's go see what happens.
It's funny because I grew up from a conservative background. I have a lot of conservative friends. I have a lot on the left. The people assigning political identity to who they are, that they have to be either right or left, or I won't even say the names of the Republican nominee, but they're in that camp and have bumper stickers, and that's all well and good for them. But I've noticed they want to tell me exactly what people will do in office. They'll predict, well, they're going to do this. You don't have a clue what they're going to do. And you can't hold one's past against the other. You can't try to blame Kamala Harris things she's done when you look at, we're so polarized when you hear that word, but I think people lack a sense of identity and they want to belong to something and some movement greater than themselves that aligns with their views. And man, you vote for you vote, that's your right. I don't judge who you are by it, but I've never seen so many people lack their own identity.
It is frightening to see the political climate right now that people are putting party over country or putting their party over their own values just to fall in line with what they feel should be expressed by this country. I mean, I've covered it for over 10 years, and I'm just at the time right now where I'm saying that, I just hope whoever gets in can change the climate and hopefully change this whole weaponized politics, weaponized media, because this is not the way we were intended to live with, everybody angry all the time and ready to argue. And, if you, go and protest and slow me down from work, I'm going to run you over. I'm like, the country was based on peaceful protest. So why can't we express our opinions? Because we're all humans. We're going to have different thought processes, different emotions because of different experiences. So why are we supposed to now all think the same? And if we don't, you need to get canceled, or you're wrong, or I don't understand what happened to agreeing to disagree.
I think people feel with the social media, they all of a sudden have the power that they've never had. They have a voice they can impose on other people. If they want to try to cancel or dox somebody, it makes them feel empowered, right? No matter how fleeting that is. I think it's based from an insecurity, lack of ability to cope. We all suffer from it, but people react like, I don't engage with a lot of trolls in the comments, but I will sometimes go after them, and I'd be a little catty and I'm petty, I'm not gonna lie. But I look at it most of the time, my white face in the lane that I'm in represents something to them that they don't like. It's not me personally. They're projecting their misery and insecurity onto me. So I don't ever take it personal, but I find it interesting the need. I could do a history video on an HBCU alumni, and somebody in the comments is going, Trump 2024. Do they think that helps? Or is it, and it goes both ways. I see people from both sides doing it. And again, it's become such a hot topic that we're not talking about a lot of things going on. I mean, I look at that Dutch athlete in the Olympics who hurt a little girl. She's 12 years old.
12.
They paid his debt to society. Man, if you're hurting kids, you ain't never paid that debt to society. That young girl's going to live with that weight on her while he's going after his dreams of being in the Olympics. And he only served 1 year so we've gotten so far away, and they keep us so distracted from. They say, I know it's the right start saying America's not a racist country. I've heard Nikki Haley and I've seen a few others say it. Those are talking points to try to confer to get their base to believe it's really not, because if you say it in times, printed, it becomes
the reality.
And that's their hot button. We're not a racist country, and they find like Americans to say that. Or what is Nikki Haley? Is she even sure what she is? She was saying it. I'm like, just read my comments. If you don't believe it's a racist country, go to my comments. Even more so than Navy Federal Credit Union. Look at all the discrimination cases they have between white customers in Black American customers last year.
Oh, that was last year. Wow.
Yeah, and then you look at I think it's 12 states that owe $16 billion to HBCUs that they hadn't paid them in the last 50 years. Even though states like schools like University of Tennessee got their billions of dollars, Tennessee State owed $2.5 billion owed to them. The money was never given, so that money went somewhere, right? It's no one's charged. Now, Governor Bill Lee did end up writing a check for $250 million right off the bat to Tennessee State, but I think also he's trying to buy time because that's a big debt. But they also fired all the board of Tennessee State, all 8 members, brought 8 new people in because the board wants the money for the school. They need it for infrastructure, classes, growth. And they had taken shipping containers to make dorms. That's how many kids want to go to Tennessee State. Wow. It's a great school, a great environment. The state's punishing them for it. They're accusing them of just being good at marketing, not because it's quality school. They had to put kids in hotel rooms initially because they didn't have rooms. So these are growing pains of a very solid higher institution of higher learning in America, and yet Tennessee State still owes them almost $2.5 billion. You know what that could have done for that school?
Definitely.
It would have been on par with the University of Tennessee, but there ain't no way those white members of that Department of Higher Learning in Tennessee. The senator that's over, it's like 80 years old. He works a mile from Tennessee State, and he's never been to that campus, but he controls all the finances. He said he was going to go have lunch one day. He's never showed up. I called and checked with their administration. I'm going to go into this too. People like to bring up Trump saved HBCUs. Let's be clear about this. Trump pledged $255 million to minority serving institutions, with $85 million of that pledged to HBCUs over a 10-year span. There's like 101 schools. That's about $85,000 a year. So we're talking 5 or 6 kids' tuition is all that money is pledged. I've spoke to 5 or 6 HBCU presidents, and some said they've never got a dime of that money, and the other ones said they get a fraction. So, they want to tout that and say he did all, but the money never happened.
Wow. It's just frightening right now, like I said, with the weaponized politics, and we got to talk about the media. That's one of the main reasons I got into the podcasting game, the sports game to start out, because I got tired of the narrative, all of the opinionated writers, and now it's trickled into the mainstream media. I know fake news has a lot to do with it, but we're not going to go there. We're going to talk about the inability of the media now to be objective writers and not insert their opinions and their politics into the mainstream media, which is turning the tide. And I know you observe more than I do. So what do you think the first step to we the people, hopefully trying to rein in some of this sensationalist journalism that's distracting and infuriating the public?
Can I give you a history lesson then that'll tie to, I'm gonna take it from Henry Ford to mainstream media and the Supreme Court.
That's why I'm here, brother.
All right. Henry Ford had three car companies. The first one failed. The second one, Henry Leland bought and turned to Cadillac. Cadillac comes from the name Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, who founded Detroit in 1702. Third car company became Ford Motor Company. But at this time, Henry didn't have a lot of money. So there's 2 brothers in Detroit who were building bicycle parts and auto parts, right? He went to them and partnered with them. They gave him $3,000 cash, $7,000 in parts. They began helping to build the Model T, help build Ford up. But around 2015, they thought that Model T's getting stale. Hey, Henry, we really ought to update this car. Henry did not like to hear that. Henry had the big ego, and he was upset and became very paranoid. Well, these 2 brothers were kind of bothered by everything that's going on. So on the side, they started their own little car company, right? Okay, on their parts, their own time.
That's what brothers do.
Well, Henry was getting wind of this, so he started cutting out their stock dividends. So they owned about 20% of the company. Well, and it got so bad. Henry Ford, remember, famously cut the work week to 40 hours and raised the pay so you could get a livable wage. That wasn't to be good to the workers. That was to screw these 2 brothers out of profit. He tried to tank Ford's stock. He's so mad at these 2 guys for having the audacity to tell him to correct his car and go start their own company. So they had to sue him for their money, went to the Supreme Court, and they ruled that Henry Ford has a fiduciary responsibility to his shareholders, these 2 brothers. Now, I believe they got maybe $20 million back in the day, money around 1920, but Henry got 80% of the money because he was the main stockholder. But he tried to drive the company in the ground to screw them. Now, you might have heard of these brothers. They started a company called Dodge. Mopar, that was their auto parts company.
Dodge brothers.
The Dodge brothers built Ford. But because Henry Ford didn't want to pay them, this became precedent in court, right? So fast forward to 2024. Mainstream media, most of them are publicly traded companies, right? They have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholder, not the customer, meaning they employ psychologists, speech therapists, But they employ a whole team of people. When you hear them repeat the same talking points over and over, the alliteration, the cadence of their voices, it's all highly scripted because they need to hold your eyes. Not only if it bleeds, it leads. They need to do it in a captivating way that you won't look away because they need you to stay for commercials. Because Nielsen, that company puts those set-top boxes out, and what that does is provide a guide for rates. It doesn't set rates, but most people know how to read them and know what the rate should be in accordance with how many viewers they have. So the more viewers they have, the longer they watch, the higher the rating, the more they can charge, which is profitable for the shareholders. Therefore, they will say and do whatever is necessary, create hysteria for us to watch, because they have a financial responsibility to do so by law. So as much as I think they're kind of dirty sometimes,
It's a business.
it's a business, and they are beholden to their shareholders by the fact they're a public company. Most people don't take that into account, and you want to get mad at them.
Damn it. That broke it down, and that definitely
That would be a good clip right there.
definitely. That was it. I never see you have the ability to break it down. I've never had the ability to break it down to that degree, but it all comes down, like you say, to the money and taking care of their stockholders, shareholders, and the folks that make the decisions. So
And I always joke, we live in the matrix, and you got to learn to step outside of it. For one, we work. I got tired of renting my time out to my employer for whatever I was making an hour, right? That's all I'm doing is renting it out. I'm not making any money. I'm not investing. So when I stopped doing that, everything changed for me because I realized while I'm making, let's call it $30 an hour, I'm paying $15 an hour in taxes, income, sales tax, groceries, everything I got to do in tax, 50% is gone, right? Healthcare. So now I'm only living on $15 an hour net, and all my expenses have to come out of it. That's not a great life, but it's better than a lot of people. But then you think about the foods they give us. The cheaper the foods we eat, the more poisonous they are. Prices are up. We tend to eat worse foods. They make us sicker. We have cancer, other diseases. We go to hospitals. Look how many more hospitals there are in our lifetime. I think cardiologists exploded by a factor of 1,000 because we didn't have a lot of cardiologists as a kid. People didn't have heart disease. But the sicker they make us, the more we have to go to doctors and hospitals. Big pharma and big hospital industry benefits, right? And they write us prescription now, big pharma benefits. And these powerful lobbies have so much money to throw at politicians to keep laws in place that do not protect us from our foods, medicines. Whenever they start putting pills on TV to advertise that everything changed with that because you used to couldn't advertise medicine like that. And so they started doing it, exploded, but they keep us from being sicker and sicker, relying more on healthcare, more on big pharma, and they're extracting more and more money out of our pockets while they work us to death. That's our matrix, that's our life. We don't have freedom like we think. I can't say what I want on social media. I'll be taken down if I try. By most people. So we don't live in a really free world. We just like to pretend we do.
we have the illusion of freedom.
Yeah, you just have to learn how the game is played and try to outplay people.
Yeah, George Carlin said it a long time ago. For some folks, it's almost 40 years now. He said that, we have the illusion of choice and freedom. You have two parties, you have, 4 major car companies, but you have 31 different flavors of ice cream and 31 different bagels to give you the illusion, we have choice, that we can make our choice of this. But no, we're still getting siphoned into the two political party, to the 40-hour work week, five work day, that we see other countries are starting to adapt and change and say that, hey, this isn't the matrix that's going to work. We can, make things and be, compromised. We don't want to adapt to change, but then we want to blame other people when we fall behind because we don't adapt to change. And it's a vicious cycle that no one is saying, hey, can we stop the crazy wheel and make some changes and adapt so we can get better instead of keep on blaming everyone else and basically succumbing to the symptoms of the problem that we created.
Our government doesn't want us to be unified. They do not want us to be. It's what cost after Martin Luther King Jr. his life, because not only did he have Black America, he started uniting poor white people. And once he started bringing them together, they couldn't have that because it become too powerful. The government and me will do anything to keep us divided. Black, white, gay, straight, up, down, left, right. It does not matter what it is. They need us polarized because we can't come together and focus. Because if we did, we could probably get term limits put in place. We could probably get Congress drug tested. We could do all these amazing things if we would put our egos aside and this polarized identity and say, hey, for 1 year, I got your back, you got mine, we're going to fix some stuff. If we did that, we'd affect change. But people, again, don't want to swallow their pride and ego. They have to work with somebody on the other side. And even though the people in Congress, the left and the right, work together behind the scenes, they go out and get drunk together, they eat lunch and dinner together. They're friends. They know how to play the game. but they have us all thinking they hate each other
It's
because we see sound bites. We've never met them. We've never talked to them. We see a 30-second or 15-second clip on the news and we make our decisions on it. It's crazy.
yeah, like my rest in peace, my old business partner said, it's all politics. It's all politics involved in just about every aspect of life. It's about optics and making sure it looks good. And as you stated, if we the people, I've said this several times on my small podcast, so I'm gonna say this on a larger podcast that you have. If we the people unite and stop getting distracted by all of the BS they're putting out there, stop letting race divide us, stop letting the smallest things divide us. In the black community, light skin, brown skin, in the white community, white privilege and poor white trash. If we get rid of those labels and, as he said, swallow our pride and say, hey, if we come together, we could actually make change happen to better our lives and not just yelling back and forth about political propaganda, then why not at least try that? Because we've been doing this for a while and we've been seeing the same results and continue doing the same thing and expecting different results. Is the definition of insanity. Now, I've always said I'm crazy, but I've never said I'm insane. But for some reason, we keep on this insane cycle and no one wants to step up and say, hey, let's cut the bullshit. I can't do it because I have the most impeachable past in the world and I wouldn't last a fact check or anything. But that's what we need, a voice to unify us. And as we talked about, sadly, it only happens when tragedy happens, is when we come together. But we have to find a way to come together without tragedy having to have that bond and say, okay, we're all human. Let's have a talk. Why can't we do that every day without a tragedy having to spark that?
People say they want unity. I think a lot of people don't. I think they're very comfortable in their own misery. Misery loves company. They don't want to see other people doing well because they're not doing well. And they're reminded that they're not. I think a lot of people prefer to be miserable. It's easier to attack other people than to be accountable to yourself. It insulates you from your own pain if you're constantly focused on somebody else. So it doesn't benefit a lot of people in their mind to get along. They can't see it. Others of us who want to unite and try to work together, that's the constant uphill battle that we fight. It's because some people just don't want to get along with us. Like I said, it's easier to hate somebody than it is to love and care about them because you're emotionally invested in somebody. If you detest them, convince yourself, or like I did when I grew up, the racist ideology, I would minimize and validate the value of your life. I didn't hate you. I just had to minimize you to make myself feel better, to justify you for my problems because I never wanted to be accountable. I was taught that. And that became my coping mechanism. And even growing up, I didn't know how to change that because there's no book on Walmart saying, hey, change the coping mechanism. I don't get flashed a Facebook ad, although I might now that I say this, that I don't get flashed anything to say, hey, learn how to cope. I didn't know I needed to cope. And then once I realized I needed to change and it's a new coping mechanism, but again, that's hard. People seek convenience.
Yeah. True. I think about it when I made my change and got therapy. It was after my dad passed away. So it was a moment of tragedy that led me to that moment of clarity. So I guess I can't say that, shouldn't have tragedy, but I just wish it would be, more genuine and more lasting. And I just want to, talk to these people that have this hate in their heart and figure out why. Because I used to be that way before I used to, angry, fighting all the time. But, can't live like that, first of all, and that's not a good way to live. But until I went into therapy and realized the reasons why I was doing that, and it wasn't because of them, I was the constant in every situation. So I had to look and hold myself accountable for the role I played in why I was doing the things I was doing. And once I had that moment of clarity, and like I always go back to my good old show, G.I. Joe, when I was 6 years old, knowing is half the battle. If I know my faults and I know my weaknesses and my triggers, I'm not going to allow them to control me. I'm going to learn how to control them. And if we as a people can look ourselves in the mirror and say that, hey, I need help. It's nothing wrong for asking for help. And there's nothing wrong with therapy because we all need someone to talk to. We all need someone to vent to. And once we can start adopting those core principles and communicating, I think that's where it starts at. But like you say, we have to hold ourselves accountable. And that's the $1 million question. How can we make that happen?
Okay, you were a G.I. Joe fan?
Yes, sir.
You remember Bulletproof, the black photo?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, his name in real life is E. Scott Morris. He's a legendary Nike and Reebok shoe designer who works at PLC Detroit, the only HBCU in Michigan. It's a gorgeous campus. He designed the Air Zoom Vic. For Michael Vick, he laid out the sketchbooks, but when he worked at Hasbro, he was a Marine.
Wow.
Had the high top fade, he's all yoked up. And they're like, would you model
Wow.
a G.I. Joe? What do you want him to be called? He's like, bulletproof. There was a bullet. It was only bulletproof. So he's literally, I found the picture when I did the story about, his name's E, he's a buddy of mine now. But I found the actual doll and then his picture, and you're like, he's like a yoked up Marine, and yeah, it's but you brought that up, and I know they're real life bulletproof.
Wow. I thought I had a lot of, off the wall facts that I had. This guy, I mean, I'm sitting, like I said, he gets that all look for me at least twice a day from some of the facts he has. I'm like, really? I'd have never thought of that.
It's just a small world, and we're so interconnected. Starting since I've gone to these HBCUs, it feels like I'm 1 degree of separation away from just about anybody. It's absolutely crazy that who'd have ever thought in life, how do I say this? When racism was the ideology that ruled my life, like I never even dreamed possible that you could be this open-minded or loving or accepting, and that people would be so gracious and merciful and forgiving back to you. Like I didn't know it could work this way. I didn't know. Nobody ever told me, mentioned it. It wasn't even a dream. It never in my mind. And even when I wanted to change, I was doing it just for me. And it opened, like I said, it created a world I didn't know existed. People say that they feel my energy, and it's because I get to walk among, I get this amazing journey of just people, and that look so much different than me. They're all different colors in the crayon box. I wouldn't have it any other way.
It's just like our interaction. I followed George, started 2 months ago, and the knowledge that he has, like I told him all the time, like you have more Black history knowledge than I do, and I'm a Black man, and I studied it. I didn't, dig in like he did, but just all the nuggets that you have and the way you tell the story and the way you educate, this is something that everybody needs, everyone, especially in the Black community, because we have a lack of knowledge of self. Going back, I don't want to get into the slavery issue, but now I feel like that's our biggest issue, that we don't know who we are, and we're allowing the media and movies and music determine how we want to be, how we want to live and to be portrayed in society. And that's just not the way it is. And when I heard your message and see the pure joy and drive that you have, it made me look at myself like, I've been doing podcasting for a while. I've been talking about it and some of these same things, but what am I doing to make change happen? And now with my new career, I'm able to do that. But the impact that you're having and the effect that you're having across the country and maybe even the world. And now I'm going to go back to question some of our community leaders, like, what are you doing? We have this reformed racist going across the country, educating on HBCUs and Black history, yet you're talking about all of the ills and all of the unfair things in the world and the country. But what are you doing to help fix those things? Whining and complaining about it isn't going to do anything. What are we doing to say, okay, we know these things are here. We have to work against them to better our lives, but it is what it is. Whining and complaining isn't going to do anything. We have to take action, and we have to have our community leaders want to take action. They all lip service during election cycle, but what happens after the election cycle? When do you see them again? When have you spoke to them? That's why you have to be proactive and start reaching out to your congressmen, your delegates, to all the people that's in there that are making these laws. We can't continue to be complacent and say our vote doesn't matter and not vote and then complain about the outcome of the vote. So we have to start making a change with ourselves first, and then it will go to society. You have to start from within yourself, not trying to point fingers at everybody else and tell them what they need to fix. If we start fixing ourselves first, then we can heal as a community, then we can heal as a country. And that's where my thought process is coming from. I told you I came from the Boy Scout generation, Hands Across America, Aid for Africa. We are the world. I was down there on the monument holding hands with somebody from across the country that didn't know where we were sending funds to, didn't know who we were trying to lift up. But because we knew they weren't doing as well as we were, and we had enough to help them, then we were helping them. And it isn't about, well, I had to pull myself up, well, I had to do this and do that. That's cool. Everyone isn't blessed the same, but we all have the same ability to bless someone else. So if we start having that thought process instead of, well, I had to do it and you should have to do it too, and yada, 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 that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't amount to anything. Help that man or woman that's trying to do better, help them be better instead of talking down on them for not being better. And that's the glaring thing that I see in my trajectory of my 46 years on this planet, and the differences from back in the 80s and 90s when things seemed like they were crazy still, but it seemed more a more welcoming country, I'll say. Now it's like everybody's at war with everybody over any little thing, and they're ready to fight or pull out a gun or ready to just, cause havoc and turmoil just because something didn't go their way. And it's like, take a breath, smoke a J, take a shot, do something to mitigate that so you're not, doing something that's going to cost you in the long run because you have a second of emotional lapse.
Speaking of, you spoke about history, like not knowing history, like the things I covered. Black history is American history. And in my lifetime experiences, most of the Black American history that I knew was negative. It was enslavement, it was Jim Crow, it was segregation, it was racism, it was civil rights, it was Martin Luther King a communist. Like, it was all negative. There was no we had Frederick Douglass. We had a few that the token stories we were taught.
The little nuggets.
Yeah, and then I want to find a way to change the narrative and perspective people have of Black American history, because this is why I say Black history is American history. Because things like we're recording on right now, that phone, Jesse Eugene Russell from Tennessee State Digital Wireless Networks, the video imaging in 3D that's in that phone is Dr. Valerie Thomas of Morgan State. She's the one who'd be able to transmit data from satellites, create the illusion transmitter patented while at NASA. She's a hidden figure you don't know about. Dr. Gladys West at Virginia State University did the math that gave us pinpoint accuracy on GPS on that phone. Mark Dean gave us the computer screens we're looking at, the first gigahertz computer chip. This is on 3 of the 9 IBM original patents for the IBM PC. I mean, we go to hospitals with integrated healthcare. The very first one was Providence in Chicago. That's Dr. Daniel Hell, who's a legendary pioneer of heart surgery, a Black American man who required his staff to be integrated because he wanted his patients to be. All these HBCUs I go to have always been integrated. They've never discriminated. People think they're only Black colleges. They're not. Black history has been, in my perception, in my life, has always been negative. It's always been tied to enslavement, Jim Crow, segregation, racism, civil rights, oppression. Like, all we ever hear is the bad.
Yeah.
And if these Black Americans are just giving us so much in just those few categories I told you, but we don't talk about it. You can't teach everything in school. Not everything can be covered. But these students need to see men and women who look like them, who've gone on to do these amazing things, so they know that they can shoot higher and go farther and do bigger things, because if they can do it, then they know that there's a chance that they can go beyond it.
Exactly.
But we minimize Black American history. Schools want to take it out, and for the life of me, I don't know why. Your Ring camera that people love. Marie Von Batten Brown actually patented the first home security system with a two-way microphone and camera in the 1960s.
Wow.
She never manufactured it. People that love golf, George Grant gave us the golf tee in the early 1900s. He patented it. Some white dudes tried to steal it from him, and they ended up losing in court, and finally the USGA recognized him. But these are just, it seems small and trivial, but I'm not even going into the educators and the abolitionists and the politicians and the doctors and medicine. Like, the first integrated hospital was Providence in Chicago. First integrated hospital in America was owned by a Black American doctor named Dr. Daniel Hell, Black American former open heart surgery. He was a pioneer. He refused to segregate his hospital. He required staff to be integrated. And he wanted so all people could come. It's still open in Chicago, and I've been people born there. Like, we can't lose sight of this, and I will be a one-man war if I have to keep this stuff from stopping being hospital. Because if I can get white educators to understand and see, like, hey, maybe I can help your teaching, your class attentiveness, because you're telling better stories. These are some of the stories we tell and shock the hell out of your kids. Yeah. Black history is American history. And it pisses me off because the value of young men and women, kids, seeing grown men and women successful in the fields they're interested in, they realize they can shoot for the stars, if that is possible. That you're taking that away from these kids. And it pisses me off. So if I can find a clever way to entertain and educate by putting a rock in people's shoes, just get them to think for themselves. If I can get white educators to realize these are some fascinating, brilliant stories that your white students would love to hear and need to hear. Because the most famous Harley Davidson in the world, arguably, is the Easy Rider Chopper, right, with the American flag painted on it and all that. That was invented by two black gentlemen from California who were left out of the credits and the movie. They created that whole trend. Black America said Cadillac in 1934, Black America said Pepsi after World War II. Like, this is all part of us. It's not a race or competition. It's we all belong in this together. The more we can see that, hey, we're in this fight and our communities have worked together and gave us all this fantastic technology, because no white person did everything themselves. Wouldn't have happened without the contributions of Black Americans and vice versa, right? So I just think it's important we start teaching kids this, and everybody should be aware. Maybe, just maybe, people look over each other and kind of like, thank you.
Yeah, that's the key is, educating and letting people know. And that's why with the whole, Confederate movement is taking down statues and, getting supposedly trying to get the racism. But then by doing that, you're taking in some of the Black Americans that are in that historic time. Now you're basically wiping away their accomplishments also because of a time in the, country that things were, messed up. But by deleting it and taking down statues still doesn't change the facts of what it was. So I have a solution, because it's still not really a hot button issue, but people are still talking about it. I say take all the Confederate statues, put them in a museum down in the South somewhere. Unfortunately, no one knows the magical answer to solve it. But like you said, we're all the same, just different skin tones. We're all the same on the inside. We just have different experiences, different thought processes. And if you can just open your mind to something other than what you've been taught and know that you don't know it all, that's half of the battle right there. I feel like everybody wants to continue to be, want to be right. But when it comes to the race issue, there is no right or wrong. We should just love each other for who we are. It doesn't matter what color the person is. I still cannot get over this race. I've never discriminated against anyone for anything unless they gave me reason to. So to automatically dislike or have a thought process against someone because they look like something or look different from you, it just doesn't compute to me. And we allow ourselves to label people, society, political groups, classes, and I feel like that's the beginning of the end. We have to stop labeling folks and get to know people. Yes, like you said, I fit the prototypical young Black male in my 20s and late teens and through most of my 20s. So I get it. I was that person. I was that where the white women would grab their purses and cross the street. I was that dude. But I was blaming society, the white man holding me down, the government, this and this. But until I had a tragedy, which my dad passed, and I had to go to therapy because it knocked me on my ass. But that was that moment where I knew I needed to make change. And then I sought therapy. And I was in therapy for over a year and a half. It took me a long time to deal with a lot of the past demons, insecurities, self-esteem, all the stuff that you said we all have. But after going through that process, where I am now, I know who I am. I accept my flaws and accept my shortcomings, and I appreciate myself for it. And I don't look at them as a bad thing. I just look at it as this is what makes me me. And we're all unique in our own ways. And once we can start accepting who we are as a person and that we're not perfect and we have flaws and we can continue to work on them day by day, because that's what life is. Trying to do better than you did the day before and be a better person than you were the day before. That's the goal. Life is about personal growth, being a human being in society to help contribute to make this place a better place than it was the day before. That's what life should be about, not about social media, Instagram, Facebook, keeping up with the Joneses, all of that BS. No, that's not what it's about. I'm going to take it to the television because I've been talking about this for a while. Think about the 80s and 90s with the Cosby Show and Different World. Mm-hmm. Look at the impact that had on Black America and how many more people were going to college and trying to aspire to be better. And then now, once BET sold out, and now you have this ratchet housewife stuff all over the place, all of this, so-called reality TV that's never reality once the camera comes on. And now you have our community aspiring to be that, along with the music trend. When you're getting bombarded with negative images in media and TV and movies and everything that you're getting, then how can you have a positive outlook that my life can be more and be better than this? I'm not saying that that's curtailing where our culture is going because of the portrayal, but like George said, when you can see someone that looks like you to get through everything they've gone through and become successful, that gives you hope. That gives you say, okay, I can surpass my current environment and make it to somewhere better. I can attest to that. I am a living example of that. In the last 2 years, my life has changed so drastically just because I was able to tweak my thought process, got into the right circles, cut off people that I didn't need in my life. And honestly, I didn't give a damn what anybody else had to say, because if you weren't helping me to progress, then you were just holding me back, and you don't need to be in my life anyway. I feel like if people can start making those tough choices and looking themselves in the eye and realizing that I need to be better, then you won't have time to worry about anybody else, because you'll be focusing on making yourself better.
You talk about skin color. I want to say this about skin color. There is no reason growing up as a kid that your color of skin and your color of skin, because you're darker than he is, should have made any difference to me in the world, because there's shades of white people. And those shades mean nothing to me. They're just people. But I was taught your shade of melanin somehow is different. And it took me a long time to realize I can't change that I'm subconsciously wired to see skin color. I cannot change that no matter what I do. What I can do, what I've done, is retrain my brain to when I see skin color, what I'm subconsciously and consciously thinking about. Instead of thinking, oh, that's a black guy. Now I see if somebody's really dark, I want to know where they're from. Are they from Africa? Are they from, South Jamaica? I want to ask questions like I just started to train my brain to think different things. And, everybody uses Dr. King's phrase about judging by the content of character, not the color of my skin. There's a lot of truth to that. I think he was way ahead of his time. Because, I look at you, Jerry. I know your story. I know you're wrongfully convicted the time you spent in prison, the hell you've been through. It's not been easy. None of that has anything to do your skin color when knowing you as a man and cared about. Just like you, Carol. You're lighter skin. You've had a completely different experience. We both been to prison. You haven't. You probably should have, but didn't. But my point is that, but again, your skin color has nothing. You're still a man that went through something. You're a man. And I had to learn to train my brain to process information differently. Because at one time, I could look at you and minimize your value and invalidate you because it could make me feel better and not be a cop. So it was easier to think you're lesser than me. That's what skin color was taught to me. I just had to be taught something else. Because if you can learn it, you can unlearn it.
Amen. That's truth. That's truth. That's very true. True words have never been spoken.